Hi, everybody, and thank you again for joining us for our live broadcast. Each week, we offer this free, informal broadcast where our audience can meet someone in the music business and learn from their experience. So please feel free to comment, and your comments will comment below this video feed, and we'll respond to any questions you have. So today's guest is my longtime friend and former colleague David Stanoch, who I met while teaching at Music Tech in Minneapolis. That school later became McNally Smith, and David taught there for 27 years. And that college recently closed its doors, and we might talk about that later. But David has played with some incredible artists. There are too many to note here, but on that list includes George Clinton, Sheryl Crow, Bonnie Raitt, Scott Henderson, Stanley Jordan, the Minnesota Orchestra, too many to mention. And not only is he a sensational drummer and a music director, he's also a really incredible music educator. I guess he's working on a book now, which I just learned. And his book, The Mastering the Tables of Time, is a drummer's reader poll winner. And anyway, he's got another book where he collaborated with Walfredo Reyes Sr., and Elliot Fine from the Minnesota Orchestra. Anyway, here he is, Mr. David Stanoch. Hey, Dave Stanoch, how are you?
So good to see you.
Yeah, it is really great to see you. It's been many, many years. We've kept in touch. I think the last time was at NAM at the Alfred booth.
Yeah, you and Matt and the kids came by.
That's right. We did.
Yep.
I'm going to turn my volume up. There we go.
I can hear you just fine. So I'm hearing everybody else out there in Facebook land. Hello.
Yeah, so this has been a hot question I've been asking very many musicians. In fact, this came up with a student um, just the other day. There's this fear of like, will I be able to make a living in the music business? Am I good enough? Drumming, is this just a pipe dream? But for like a young, talented, aspiring drummer, um, who has the potential, right? How do you keep afloat not only in the music business during regular times, but what do you do during a pandemic to keep food on the table?
Well, you become, diversified. You imagination. You have to become inventive. One thing that I really started to learn back when I started teaching at Music Tech, where I was hired by a longtime Steve Miller Band drummer, Gordy Knudsen, was to just not put all of your eggs in one basket. And so for people like us, that can be performing, that can be teaching, that could be getting involved in production. For me, it is also, moved into educational resources outside of when I was teaching at McNally Smith, and now, of course, on my own. 10, actually 12 years ago now, was when I released my first book, Mastering the Tables of Time. And that was a real game changer for me because it won the Modern Drummer Readers Poll. And that was when I had originally just taken out a home equity loan and self published it with my own money, uh, because I was given great advice by my childhood teacher, who you mentioned earlier, the great Elliot Fine, co-author with Marv Dahlgren of one of the most popular method books of all time, four-way coordination. Elliot said, put it out yourself. Don't settle for 10%, which is what the rate that a publisher would pay you. And he predicted all this stuff, Beth. It was wild. He said, your book's going to win the Modern Drummer Readers Poll, and when that happens, everybody's going to come to you. And he says, and then you can command a much higher percentage, even 50%, because they'll pay you a distribution fee. And I thought, oh, that all sounds nice, but damned if it didn't all come true. I mean, he could see it. He believed in me, and so anyway, the question is about how do you survive? So diversification. The work in education has been good for me because it also leads to my ability to go out and do clinics and get paid to do that. The book generates sales. I've written a lot for Modern Drummer. I am now drum set editor for the the magazine put out by the Percussive Arts Society called Percussive Notes, and so I can use those skills that way. Like a lot of people, my performance work was, terribly interrupted this year, right? Sean Johnson, who I'm the band leader for the Sean Johnson Big Band Experience. Sean gone to number 5, our debut record last summer. We had a tour booked for a year all around the country. We got started in January and February, and then by mid-March, dates that we had on the calendar really all the way into next year and beyond just fell through. And we're still, with now that this is still a dilemma for people, I'm still getting emails from the management, dates that haven't quite been canceled yet towards the end of the year are now falling off and early next year. But one of the ways you try to work around that is, I have a home recording setup up and functioning now, which took me a little longer than I wanted, but I was really busy with a bunch of other stuff. But fortunately, I've got like half a dozen projects in the queue that people want me to play on, and I'm available to play on your project, Facebook people. And so that's good, right? I'm doing that, and the college that we worked at together, Music Tech when you were there, McNally Smith College of Music later, that folded a little over 2 years ago, and that's when I started the David Stanoch School of Drumming, which is the home studio that you see me in right now. And I'm glad that it happened then, because I really researched being able to create facility.
Hey Dave, can you turn your input level up a little bit more, please? I've got my speaker pretty cranked. Okay.
Okay. Is that better?
Oh,
Is that better?
yes, so much better. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm really excited to show everybody your setup because you were just showing me all your different camera angles. That is pretty cool. But yeah, tell me more about your drum school and how you operate. I saw some of, actually I already posted the link below the feed so people can see that. But yeah, tell us more about how you operate.
Sure. I mean, I've got students that I see. I've been primarily using Skype. Zoom really got more popular with the pandemic, but I can use really whatever works. But I run everything through a system here where, again, I try to offer as close to a in-person experience, one-on-one with students as I can. So that involves like the use of the different cameras. I might as well just show you right now. So when we're going over things, I can play for you right here and see you and talk to you, and you can see into the camera. But if I need to show you something more particular that might involve the full kit, and you're not in the same room with me, I can give you this perspective, sort of the overhead NFL cam kind of a thing, right? Where you can see the hands and the feet in motion together, and if we need to get specific about the feet, I have the foot cam, so if we're playing like if I want to play a samba with you, like we like to do so much, right? I can show them great.
That is awesome. I lost your sound again. I don't know if it's because when I talk that it's reduced.
Okay, part of that is me remembering to. I've actually. I'll talk about this in a second. There's a. I'm running sound through the Yamaha EAD10 unit, and there's a talkback mic. And when I have the talkback switch on, you can hear me better. I just always have to remember to engage it or unengage it if I'm going to play, so it doesn't distort the audio.
It's so much better. But yeah, I get there's a totally different level when you're speaking and playing and how that can be a problem.
I'm still getting used to it. And in fact, that's something that. Well, I might as well talk. Well, here I'll finish up about the school. So I'm lucky. I've got students all over the world, and what's cool is, like early in the day when a lot of people in the States and certainly locally might be working. I mean, especially at normal times, everything's different now. But it's later in the afternoon and early in the evening over like in Europe and places like that. So my students over there, I can teach them earlier in the morning because it's later in the day for there. And then as the day goes on, I've got more people that I see around the United States, and sometimes it's weird. Like I've got a student in Japan where whenever I teach him, it's like maybe 6 at night my time, and where he is, it's like 8:30 the next day in the morning. You know, that kind of a thing. And you start to figure all this stuff out, which is really great. And so that's been nice because I am fortunate enough through my performance and especially through my work as an educator that, like with the book especially, you know, people are interested, and so that has drawn uh, students my way. People who are interested in like the method I teach, and one of the nice things about Mastering the Tables of Time, which after I won the Modern Drummers Readers Poll, I was contacted by all the publishers, just like Elliot predicted, and Alfred Music and Dave Black and the gang there who uh, were in charge of all things drum and percussion at Alfred. They offered me the best deal and distribution you could get, which was fantastic, and which I still have to this day. And then more recently, actually just 1 year ago now, Hudson Music, which is the largest publisher of audio and video and print resources for drummers worldwide, asked if we could work something out to create a digital version of Mastering the Tables of Time, which I had wanted to have available a long time ago, and for various reasons it just wasn't coming together. So for a year now, the book has been available through Hudson Music, and it's a very strong seller for them, which I'm very excited about. And so that helps generate business, and Hudson is really great with continual promotion, and so that keeps things happening for the school and I. I mentioned the Yamaha EAD-10 unit, which is a great unit that they put out a couple years ago, which it has all kinds of abilities into it. It's really like it's an acoustic electric drum microphone and trigger unit, and so it mics your drums acoustically. There's this lower end mic for the bass drum, and then this upper end mic for things. You can program it to play like a zillion, like, you know, cool sounds, acoustically driven, more reverb, electronic sounds, echo sounds. I won't take the time to run through all that right now, but also since the pandemic, they've wanted to introduce it more as a cool tool for teaching, because it does have a click and it does have an instant record and playback function, which is really good for students. Because hearing yourself, you know, back on tape shows you right where you're at, you know, and it can take so much time off your development as a player. So they developed this talkback mic where I'm playing with it, where you know, you can move the gain up or down, and you can run it into something like what we're doing here, and you know, it makes it possible to teach and communicate and have kind of cool sound options. And so I've got a video that'll be coming out soon that shows not only kind of some ways to do that, and also optimize the sound for, you know, anybody who might be receiving you from a real state-of-the-art system to the most basic of laptop speakers, so you don't blow them out, because this bass drum, that moves a lot of air if you lay into it, right? And so, and there's a few other surprises that we have in store for the video, but that'll be out very soon. And so it's been great to work with the people in Yamaha. I've been a Yamaha endorser for, I think, about a decade now. And, you know, I mean, they're just a fantastic team to be involved with, and they're super supportive of me. It was about 2 years ago, they gave me this beautiful, I don't know if you can read that, but they call it the Legacy and Education Award. And so, David Stanoch, in gratitude for your endless commitment to music education from Yamaha, it really blew my mind. I was so, um,
Hey,
so
can I say, I just want to get to our comments really quick, because we have people commenting in, and that I have a couple more questions for you and all that. But oh, Angie Dieters. Hey, Angie. You know, my sister Angie, she's out there. And then she says, so much better. I think she was talking about the sound, but it's funny. You're right. When I talk to you, when I'm talking, I can't hear you at the same time. There's kind of a smooshing of your sound that comes through. She said, that's a brilliant setup. Wow. Exclamation points, two of them. And Oksana Foss, hey, how are you? So good to see you. Commenting, her daughter Rosie is like an incredible classical pianist. She says, thank you for bringing incredibly talented people to share their talents. Wow, love the sound and the camera settings from different angles. And then, oh, that was a mom saying that was Rosie, by the way. So it was not the mom, it was the daughter commenting. So she was with us when she was very young. I think she's like a teenager now. Anyway, no questions yet, but we'll keep an eye on the feed. It's always a good thing. Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't mean to interrupt you. You can continue with that. I would also, I know you do a lot of clinics. You did a Zoom clinic last week. I'd love to talk about that. And I also want our audience to know something personal about you that I've been thinking a lot about. Don't worry, Dave. So David Stanoch, since I've known you since I was like 21 years old, and we were both very young teachers, and at that time, one thing that really struck me about you is like this incredible connection you had with the older generation, and like you loved older people and the wisdom and what you could learn from them, and that absolutely translates in the drumming world. So I would love for you to share like your biggest mentors, why that's like so part of your character to look to, you know, people who were learning before we were around. And now I'll be
Absolutely.
quiet.
Well, good. Well, that's really a nice question because we have a lovely thing to talk about. I mean, and I'm blessed. I mean, really, there's a lot of people in that category that I can talk about. But since he's come back, really the
Wait,
first one
your sound is a little weird again. Did you? It's just a little muffled, or you had the
I,
right setting on?
yeah, I got the game mic on.
Okay, maybe I'm going to mute. Go ahead. Sorry.
That might help. That might help. Okay. So, yes. Okay. Perfect. Now we're not. Yeah, we're not us. Yeah. Okay. Elliot Fine was my teacher not my first drum teacher. I started when I was about 7, but when I got to the point where I wanted to have really a stronger teacher, I found my way to Elliot, and I was really glad that I did. I mean, he took a personal interest in me that manifested itself in so many ways. He helped me think creatively as a player. He got me my first gig playing in the pit orchestra of the Chimera Theater here for a production of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum when I was only 12 years old because I could read, and when I was in high school, my senior year of high school, my at Minnetonka High School, my great high school band director Dan Gelder pulled in Ed Shaughnessy, who at the time was riding high as Doc Severinsen's drummer on the Tonight Show band with Johnny Carson. They were in their heyday there, and he brought in Ed as the guest artist for my senior year, our spring concert, which was really exciting. Well, Doc Severinsen at that time for many years had already been pops conductor for Minnesota Orchestra. And so Ed would often come play with Doc with the Minnesota Orchestra. So Elliot knew Ed really well, and he helped me set it up with Ed that Ed and I would play together at this concert my senior year. I mean, and that became like an incredible moment in my life. It became an incredible experience. And over the years, Ed remained supportive in more ways than I have time to talk to here, but it culminated in just a few years ago when Ed unfortunately became too sick to ever play again, although we didn't know that at the time. He tapped me to sub for Doc with the big band here at Orchestra Hall. And so, here I was a kid growing up watching Ed play with Doc and got to play with Ed. And then all these years later, I'm, subbing for Ed with Doc. So Ed's in that list of older mentors too, but I thank Elliot Fine for that. Elliot Fine got me connected with Ed. He also got me connected with Jeff Hamilton, who I studied with for the few years I lived in Los Angeles after I got out of college in the mid '80s. And I mean, I learned so much from Jeff, and we remain friends to this day. And he's such a force, and he's grown into the recognition that he deserves. But I owe Elliot that connection. When I went to college, well, I should also mention Marv Dahlgren because I first started. Those two were joined at the hip, both in the Minnesota Orchestra. Marv had a drum shop in town, and Marv took a great interest in me from the time I was young. That was very special to me. Fast forward to when I started teaching at McNally Smith or Music Tech. Marv was on the faculty there. So I worked with Marv for 25 years at the school, but also during that whole period of time as the drummer in his quartet or quintet, it was, depending on if we had a woodwind player, because Marv liked to front the group on vibes. He was an amazing vibes player. And so I got to play drum set, and Marv really opened a lot of doors for me too, as did Elliot. And so just being around these guys was such a fountain of knowledge. And it also, you know, it also created opportunities. I first got to know Elvin Jones through Marv and Elliot because Elvin was very close with them. I got to know Terry Bozzio through Marv and Elliot because Terry was a disciple of their book Four-Way Coordination. And so I got to be friends with those people. When I went to college, I went to study with the great Richard Davis, who is a bass player that if people don't know him by name, they might know he was bass player for the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Orchestra. He played with Sarah Vaughan, with Roy Haynes in the rhythm section for many years. He became a recording artist that played on classic records like Astral Weeks by Van Morrison and Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen and At 17 with Janice Ian, and he did a tour with Laura Nero that was incredible, and you know, and played with everybody in jazz. He's on Out to Lunch with Eric Dolphy and so many great records, you know, and Richard had left New York where he had been a first call studio bass player for almost 30 years to teach at UW-Madison, where I went to school. And I was really attracted to the idea of studying with Richard because Elliot had really helped me grow as a drummer. And as a drummer, I was kind of, by the time I got out of high school, a big fish in a small pond. I wanted to study with Richard Davis, particularly to have a deeper rhythm section experience. You know, the drummer and the bass player have to be like this. And so, fortunately, that's how it worked studying with Richard, and he remains a dear friend to this day. One thing about Ed Shaughnessy is I found out later, Ed and Richard had done a lot of studio work in New York before The Tonight Show moved to Los Angeles. So like the week I got to college, Richard Davis comes up and says, I have a letter for you in my office from Ed Shaughnessy. He says, why am I getting mail for you from Ed Shaughnessy, right? But what I found out was Ed sent Richard a note about me and like gave me the okay, you know, and that's the way those guys operated in those days. And through them, I got to, through college, and Richard and James Latimer, my percussion teacher there, I got to study with Max Roach. I got to study with Alan Dawson. They came in and did artist residencies. And so, yes, there was all this worldly wisdom around me. In later years, Elliot introduced me, and Marv introduced to Walfredo de Reyes Sr., and I helped Elliot and Walfredo Sr., you know, finish this book, which was their dream collaboration together, the 2-in-1 drummer, which is sort of a combination of how four-way coordination worked with Walfredo's innovative mind in Cuba, being able to, like, you know, play hand drums and drum set together, right? And so all this, you know, all these different things, you know, Wally Sr. was really the first guy to combine the drum set and hand percussion, and that's a thing that has become, you know, more popular as time goes on. You would appreciate this, Beth. Walfredo told me the reason that happened, the reason he started thinking that way about combining the drum set and hand percussion, is because he had this gig in Cuba, this very popular gig at this hotel, and the budget he had, he was like, the band he had, he said, okay, he said, I could hire a percussionist or I could hire a singer. And he decided he wanted a singer. So he decided, I'll play percussion drums myself, right? And so that's how he did it, you know. And he said that turned out to be a good move because, of course, you know, you want to have a singer, right? You're playing popular music and everything like that. So anyway, I know we don't have a lot of time and everything like that, but I think that's probably a good overview in general of the kind of gratitude I hope I'm extending for the mentors I've had that, you know, have come before. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you have had so many. And so I do have a question that came in the comments feed. So that's from our wonderful Pat Hurst. Hi, Pat. Pat's a really talented songwriter and singer. And her question for you is, what has been the favorite time in your multi-track career? And I think she has another question for you, but let's start with that one.
My honest answer is I don't know. I mean, honestly, it's. I mean, even with the challenges we're having right now, I mean, I've been blessed to have many opportunities. I can tell you one. I played in Carnegie Hall when I was 16 with a youth symphony, and then spent the summer of that year, my 16th year, in Europe. I got to go to the Paiste Cymbal Factory, and later I became, not then, but later I became a Paiste endorser. I got to play, we played in the Notre Dame Cathedral. I was, to watch that burn was so, sad, but I played a gig there where I can tell you it had like the worst acoustics in the world, because you were set up on the center of the cross in the church. So you had sound going the long way and the short way and this way and that way. And like here we were doing was insanely difficult. But the French people were so demonstrative that I'm sitting at the timpani counting like maybe 50 bars of rests, and people are literally coming up on the stage embracing us and thanking us for playing there and stuff like that, which was, mind blowing. I'd never seen anything like that before. But that tour is very important because Elliot helped me prepare for it. He was, of course, one of the principals in the Minnesota Orchestra, and I got to play drum set. I got to play a multitude of percussion, and it was when I came back from that tour at age 16, after my sophomore year of high school, that I knew what I wanted to do for a career. So, I mean, that's a definite high point for many reasons, but, music is funny. I mean, I could talk about playing with a lot of the great names like Beth mentioned and stuff, and those experiences that I've had, and how gratifying and exciting it is to do something like that. But like, I've also played gigs with Beth in places where there were hardly anybody listening, but the musicianship was so good, the music was so strong.
I love that that's the example you bring me into. Thank you.
Gigs at Capucci's, and sometimes there'd be a lot of people there, and sometimes it'd be just us. But we'd play, and we'd play well, and you'd think, wow, it's like I really wish somebody could have heard that tonight, because we played our asses off. You never know, right? And so I look forward, obviously, to better days ahead with what everybody's dealing with right now, especially for people like us in our business where live performance is so important. And I think a lot of people, not just the people who are missing the work, but the people who want to go out and hear music, are really missing that kind of thing. But
Hey, Dave, I've got two more questions. I hate to rush you because I'm so committed to keeping this live broadcast short, but I know we could hang out with you for an hour, but I have two more questions. Sorry to beat you up with these questions. So I'm going to give them back to back because it works so much better when I mute. The first question, another one from Pat, which is a really fun question. She says he's worked with several comedians such as Joan Rivers, Don Rickles, and Bob Newhart. Sorry, I can't talk today. Was a vibe in the room different than working more traditional musician gigs that you've worked on? So that's one question. Question two is from one of our really talented drum students, Brody Smith. Hi, Brody. Says, do you have any tips for big band drumming? I know that's an open-ended question, but why don't you start with one and then go straight to number two? Thank you.
I will. All right. So just real quick, Brody, I'll definitely try to give you some tips you can use. Feel free to contact me later too if you want. I mean, big band's something that I was introduced to from a very young age, and I'm fortunate that way. And to segue back to the first question, the big band style of drumming was what got me gigs with comedians like Joan Rivers and Don Rickles and Bob Newhart and also Martin Short. They had books with charts. Don Rickles was wall music. Dave Harbeth, who you know, right? We finished the first rehearsal with Don Rickles. Dave Carr, he's right below my riser, on the corner of the saxophone section. And he looks up at me. He goes, wow. He goes, for a comedian, this sure is a lot like playing West Side Story, and because there was so much music,
Well, I have a question, just a sidebar, because you're bringing this comedian and big band question all together, which is so true. Because I think I toured with Les Brown's Band of Renown for quite a while, and they were the band for Bob Hope. And so what is that with the big band and the comedian? I'm going to mute again, but it's just really interesting.
It's the era they come from. You know, Rickles was part of the Rat Pack. You know, he was an extension of Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, Buddy Rich. You know, the first time I worked with Don Rickles, he called me into his dressing room when we were walking by, and it was a trip because he had his own like beautiful, like immaculate kind of chair, and he had a robe and a buffet, and he had a valet. And we're walking by, and he goes, "Hey, Dave, come here." And he knew my name because Joe Mealy, the musical director, worked out there's a bit Don does with the drummer, and when you rehearse, Don's not there, but the MD runs you through the whole thing. And like a big band, you have to read your sight reading. But Don brought me in and said, "Man, the band sounds really great," and blah blah blah. And I was like nervous, but he was really cool. And I said, so I just got to talking with him, and I said, "Well, you were pals with Buddy Rich, right?" He said, "Oh man, we were neighbors in Nevada, outside of Vegas, and we used to ride our motorcycles together in the desert." And so, to your question, Beth, Bob Hope, you know, those Rickles, Newhart, Joan Rivers, they all started coming up when big bands were, you know, still a very powerful part of the contemporary music scene. And so in places like Las Vegas, there would be those types of bands, and they would be the groups that would be backing, you know, the comedians in the lounges and in the theaters and all that kind of stuff like that. So it's that kind of tradition. You actually see it much less now because the time has passed for many of those comedians. You know, I mean, Joan's gone, Don's gone. Well, I've worked with Regis Philbin. He recently passed away. You know, Martin Short is a younger era comedian for sure, but than those guys. But you know, it was the same kind of thing. Funny story about Marty Short. We worked with him, and I'll try to tell this real quick. There was a blizzard going on the day of Martin's show, and it was a sold-out show. Gordy was even at the audience at this show. That they couldn't land, Marty and his musical director. And Marty's musical director is Jimmy Kimmel's music director on Jimmy Kimmel's TV show out there where you are. And so we couldn't rehearse because we didn't have the book. And they got there just before the house opened. And when they got there, Short walked on stage, and Joan would do this too, introduced himself to everybody in the band individually, shook their hand, you know, "Hi, Dave, I'm Marty. You know, what's your name?" "Dave." "Hi, Dave, I'm Marty." You know, Marty, right? You know, and he's like, "Well, you know, we're just going to hope for the best." Well, we nailed his show. We sight read that kind of stuff all the time. Gordy was out in the audience. He had no idea. I said, "We didn't even get to rehearse." And he was like, "Oh my God." You know, I was like, wow. You know, and so for Brody, the way you learn to read a chart in a big band, you know, and the kind of skills that you get through listening and interpretation, because for a drummer, it doesn't tell you exactly what to play in a big band chart like it would on a piece of snare drum music. When I was in high school, my brother, who is 4 years older than me, he got the gig on bass in the high school jazz ensemble, and I used to watch him and listen to the great music they were playing at that time. And those bands were still popular in those days. Count Basie, Maynard Ferguson, Buddy Rich, Woody Herman. My brother would bring the records home. Before I ever saw the charts for drums, I learned how to play those tunes by ear. So I understood how the setups work and how the long notes and the short notes worked and the high tones and the low tones just by ear. And then when I saw the charts are much more ambiguous, but there's clues there. But I understood. I'm like, oh, that's how that works. You know, and so that was a gift for me. But just to be able to keep time and read a chart is a skill you learn as a big band drummer, and that helps you in the studios. It certainly helped me with any show work I've done with the comedians and anybody else, and so it's all related.
Yeah, that is awesome advice. And that listening part is just such a huge thing for every artist, every musician.
How are you going to get into the groove if you're not listening? You know, Jeff Hamilton used to say, "Your job is to know your beat and offer it to the band to lean on," and you know, then you have to listen. Teamwork is an agreement in a groove. You have to be able to get out of your own way so you can work with the people you're with and find the magic there. It's not going to come just from the drums. It's not going to come just from the bass. You know, it's everybody. Listening is how you know if you know it's working or not, right?
Absolutely. Hey, we are so out of time, and I feel like I've cut you off so many times to try to get through in a half hour, and we hardly ever make it in 30 minutes, but we're close. But I would love if I cut you off at any point where you're trying to finish something, you can insert that in right now. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any last minute questions. No, I think we got through all the questions, so that part is good. But if I see any comments or questions on the feed, I'll direct them that your way. So if anybody has any questions after this or they watch us later, we'll do our best to answer those for you. And I'm going to mute, and if you have any last comments or anything to share, thank you so much for being here, David.
Thanks, Beth. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I really appreciate you inviting me. For people that maybe tuned in late or don't really know, I mean, Beth and I are old friends, and we work together here in the Twin Cities, and so it's great to be connected, and it's great to have a chance to just hang and just enjoy the fact that we're friends. Who I mean, look at everything that Beth and Matt have done with Coast Music. My hat's off to you, because that's not an easy thing to do, to run a music school like that. I'm trying to run my own little independent thing, and I just signed on actually with a performing arts center here in the Twin Cities called Heartbeat. It's been around for 25 years, and I'm going to be offering drum and percussion courses starting in October with them from October through June. And I see how hard they work, because they're a small independent kind of school. So hats off to you. So it's just great fun to be here, and I appreciate that there were people that were interested enough to ask questions. Thanks for listening, and thanks for checking it out. Beth, number one rule of show business, right? Always leave them wanting more, right? So here
Perfect,
we are.
perfect. Yay. Thanks again, and highly inspiring to me, to other teachers, to up and coming drummers. Really appreciate your time. And I'll give you a call when we hang up here. But again, everybody, feel free to leave your comments here. And thank you so much, David Stanoch, for spending the last 38 minutes with us. All right. Enjoy your weekend. Bye bye.